Jersey Central with Burt Barron.
Think we could listen to the radio or something?
On the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
It's 8:09. Welcome to hour number 3 of Jersey Central on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC, the voice of Central Jersey. It's Burt. Good morning to you. Fair 66 traffic and weather update coming up at 8:15. We'll do our need to know things and our contest a little bit later on. Joining me now on the Jersey Central Newsmaker Hotline, I want to welcome in the director of a group called Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey. And there are some things going on, particularly something that happened on Friday night that we want to get all the information on. And this is of particular importance to a lot of people. So let's welcome in our guest who is with us here, Doug Johnston, again, the director of Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey, who is with us here on WCTC. Doug, good morning. It's Burt Barron. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, but we got bad news coming out of the State House in Trenton late on Friday night in the dark of night.
Right, catch us up.
County. What's that?
Catch us up on what happened, because a lot of people might have missed this late on Friday.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did, because that's why legislators introduce bills in the late, dark hours of night, literally Friday night. Middlesex County State Senator Joe Vitale introduced Senate Bill 4, which is a tax and takeover bill of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which covers 3.8 million people with health insurance. They're the biggest insurer in the state, and they are not-for-profit institution, and essentially the state wants to take it over so they can raid the reserve funds of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which will increase costs, a premium cost for people who depend on Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, people I've spoken to, and they're scared to death of the craziness being discussed in Trenton, along with all the chaos in Washington, D.C. It's really scary time right now, and we need people to reach out to their state senators and say, put the brakes on this. Senator Joe Vitale's a good guy, but he's introduced a really bad bill on behalf of Governor Chris Christie.
Talk about the amount. How much are we talking about with these reserve funds here, Doug? I've heard a couple of numbers thrown around. What's the exact number?
Sure. So the governor originally that's funny, more of a demand of $300 million from Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which pays taxes already in the hundreds of millions of dollars. He demanded $300 million back in March. He proposed a bill that not a single legislator wanted to introduce at the time. And now finally, Senator Joe Vitale of Middlesex County has introduced a bill that is pretty much the same thing, that is not just a tax and takeover bill. It sets up a system for radically changing the mission and goals of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield and the way that organization is run, and it's going to result in instability for the company. It's going to result in higher premiums. So if you get your health care coverage from Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, you will pay more. And this is just crazy timing to do it. They're trying to force this bill through the Senate this week, starting this afternoon with hearings in Trenton. And we got to say to our politicians, stop this madness. Keep your hands off our health care.
Now, the foundation already, Doug, the Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey Foundation, they already give away a lot of money. They're already very charitable with this money already. So the demand now is to give over more money?
Essentially, that's what they want. They want to set up a system where this charitable institution will be looked at every single year, and if the state, decides, hey, you got some extra money laying around, we'll just take it. It's going to end up in years of litigation. There's no way this ridiculousness is even constitutional. So it's going to burn state tax dollars in a pathetic, vain attempt to get more money for state government programs and policies. It's just bad policy, and they're trying to force it through the legislature today in Trenton. And, Joe Vitale should know better than to do the bidding of Chris Christie.
Yeah, there's a lot of things at play here. Our guest is Doug Johnston. He's the director of Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey. First of all, for Governor Christie to have Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield on his radar, just because, he hears that somebody has a lot of money and he's got this pet project where he pretends to care about people who are going through drug rehabilitation and wrestling with addiction, and how do I fund this program as I leave office? He looks at Horizon and says, well, wait a minute. You guys have $300 million. I want that money. Why can't I have that money? Which is bizarre, first of all, because typically conservatives or Republicans, as you know, Doug, don't go and take money. They like to let people, if you've earned money and you got money, you can keep it. It doesn't surprise me at all for Joe Vitale, Senator Joe Vitale, who is a liberal and a Democrat, to say, well, you know what? I take from the rich and give to the poor. That's what I do. To see these two guys working together and on the same page with something, that's the most disturbing part of this entire thing for me, I think, Doug, which is very uncharacteristic for either of these two guys to agree on anything. But now that we're talking about $300 million, now all of a sudden they're buddy-buddy, and now this all makes sense.
Yeah, well, why do you rob a bank? Because that's where the money is. And there's no other possible explanation for this attack on Horizon Blue Cross and the 3.8 million subscribers who get their coverage from Horizon Blue Cross. Those 3.8 million people are the ones who are going to end up paying higher premiums and higher co-pays, more money out of pocket to pay for this ridiculousness. And this is all part of a dirty budget deal with Governor Chris Christie so the Democrats can get a few other things. But it's just going to end up in taxpayers footing the bill for years of litigation, because this is going to be fought in the courts for years on. There's no way it's constitutional. It's reprehensible. And forcing it through the legislature in 1 week's time is pure insanity. But you know why they do that? They do that because they know the bill stinks. That's what you do with bad bills. You shove them through the process so you can get the political payoff, because you don't want transparency. You don't want people asking tough questions. You don't want opposition to rise up and say, this is nuts. But that's what we're trying to do. So we encourage people to reach out to their state senators and ask Joe Vitale and Senate President Steve Sweeney to stop collaborating with Christie on this raid on Horizon. It's just nuts.
Yeah, and I think it sets a bad precedent also. Let's say, for example, let's play worst-case scenario, and let's say the lawmakers get their hands on this money here. Can't Horizon now turn around and say, well, wait a minute, if you're taking money from me, what about all these other foundations and all these other organizations in New Jersey? Why aren't you taking their reserves? How come their money isn't fair game, but my money is? And now this is going to drag it out even longer in the courts.
Oh, yeah. If they can do this to Horizon, they can go to every not-for-profit, nonprofit organization and demand more money from these organizations. This is an incredible abuse of legislative authority and governmental power. It's unconscionable.
Yeah, you got a pretty powerful guy in your corner on this, Doug. And I want to. Can you hold on after the break? And I want you to talk about. You have somebody else who's fighting with you guys on this. And can you hang on? I want to pick this up in just a few minutes. All right?
Yes.
All right, thanks a lot. Doug Johnston is my guest. He is the director of Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey, and we're going to talk more with him coming up in just a few moments here. Very important stuff going on. Jersey Central traffic and weather time, 8:16. Traffic and weather every 10 minutes on Jersey Central. Traffic update first, and here's Tom Colangelo.
Yeah, we do have a moderately busy ride as you make your way in the Parkway. A little bit slow getting up to the Driscoll, and some delays merging with the Turnpike. 287, we'll call it heavy exits 1 to 4, and again, 9 up to 14. 18's a busier ride into Route 1. Southbound on the Turnpike, a little bit extra busy once you pass exit 9. Route 130 with some extra company getting down in through South Brunswick as well. Route 9's not too bad. Old Bridge up to South Amboy. 287 starting to build southbound coming off 22 as well. And New Jersey Transit looks okay. I'm Tom Colangelo with your 1450 WCTC traffic update.
Now the 1450 WCTC forecast. Morning sunshine today. We'll mix with some afternoon clouds. It's going to be actually turning out to be a nice, gorgeous June day. Highs right around 80 with low humidity. Then more clouds arriving tonight could produce a brief shower, low 55 to 60. Tuesday partly sunny, maybe another afternoon shower, thunder shower not getting in the 70s. Then clearing at night, 55 to 60. Wednesday plenty of sunshine, high right around 80. Meteorologist Tommy Els on 1450 WCTC.
Speak up and be heard on Jersey issues that matter most to you. Call Jersey Central with Bert Barron now at 732-545-9282 or toll free at 888-545-9282. Your state, your home, your voice. Jersey Central with Bert Barron on the new Talk Radio 1450 WCTC.
Where the Forge Jewelers Omega time is 8:18. Forge Jewelers, the official jeweler of 1450 WCTC. Need to know things, and our contest will come up in the 8:30 half hour of Jersey Central this morning. My guest is Doug Johnston, who is the director of Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey, trying to put a stop to some legislation that was introduced late on Friday that would allow the state government to help themselves, if you will, to the reserves of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the biggest insurance provider in New Jersey. And Doug is here to tell us why this is such a horrendous idea. Doug, welcome back, and thanks for hanging on. You've got a pretty powerful ally in your corner. in fact, a former presidential candidate who lives in New Jersey. You want to talk about who's working right alongside you with this?
Sure. So Forbes media CEO Steve Forbes, who lives in Jersey, is actively working against this proposal by Governor Christie and Senator Joe Vitale. And, we've got a broad-based coalition of business, industry, labor, left-wing groups, right-wing groups, moderate, middle-of-the-road groups. I mean, there is a huge coalition of people, and Steve Forbes has been working on this for months because he calls it political retribution. Now, I can't speak for Steve Forbes, but there is broad bipartisan opposition to this legislation, but the politicians in Trenton are just dying to get their hands on more money, which is going to come out of the pockets of 3.8 million people who depend on Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, and that's just wrong. And they're trying to force it through the legislature starting today. This week, it's a dirty deal, dirty deeds done dirt cheap is what I like to call it, and that's what they're doing, and we got to stop it.
Now, you look at Steve Forbes, Doug, here's a guy who's done pretty well for himself in New Jersey as well. What's to say that he's not next? If this is to go through with Horizon, what if we now turn to wealthy individuals and say, well, you don't need all that money. We're struggling to pay our bills here in the state of New Jersey. Well, why don't we decide how much money you can have? Maybe he's next in the crosshairs for this. Who knows?
Yeah, well, it's a scary abuse of governmental power to go after one entity, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield, which covers 3.8 million people. But when the legislature is going to pass a bill going after one company, who's to say they won't do the Red Cross, the Salvation Army? I mean, there are dozens and dozens of great charitable institutions in the state of New Jersey. This is political retribution. That's what Steve Forbes has called it, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. And it puts a huge target on every not-for-profit, nonprofit organization in the state of New Jersey. Basically, Chris Christie demanded $300 million from the people at Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. They said, no, we can't do it because it will increase our insurance premiums and copays and whatnot, and that will hurt the 3.8 million people covered by Horizon. And so they came up with a bill. Governor Christie said, if you won't pay, I will take it from you. That's what Senator Joe Vitale's bill is all about. They're doing it to Horizon today, and they're going to do it to somebody else tomorrow.
Yeah, and I always, Doug, always take worst-case scenario a step further. I always do. What's to say next that religious institutions are going to have to face this? You know what? You want to practice this here, or you want to be able to have churches and temples and synagogues and mosques to be able with some special tax exemptions. You know what? If you're making money, maybe some of that profit should come the way of the state. Who's to say that's not next, Doug? That's what scares me.
Well, that's exactly right. And under law, they do enjoy tax-free status, those kind of institutions. Ironically, Horizon does not. They pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes, federal and state. But the legislature is going to pass a bill by fiat that basically will say, we deem you to be charitable, and thus we have the right to investigate you and determine if you have too much money in your savings account. That's disgusting abuse of power. That's the kind of thing you see in Russia or China or God knows what other tyrannical governments. This is just pure insanity, and it's got to stop. And Joe Vitale's a good guy. He should know better.
Doug, for John Q. taxpayer who is listening right now, what's the next step? What action would you like to see him or her take?
Call the state legislature right now. Call your assembly members. Call your members of the state senate and stop this madness. We're doing a press conference at 10 a.m. with business and labor leaders, including Steve Forbes, and I encourage you to dial in for that, Bert. But we encourage people to call your legislators and say, you're paying too much already. New Jersey is too damn expensive already. Do not pass Senate Bill 4. It's going to increase our premiums, and it puts a huge target on every not-for-profit charitable institution in the state of New Jersey, and that is nuts.
Oh, I got the number for this telepress conference, Doug. You better believe I'm going to be dialing in a little bit later on this morning because I want to hear what Mr. Forbes has to say and also get some more information about this. But it is wrong on every level, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever, just to say, well, you know what? You have something that I want, so I'm going to draft legislation that will allow me to take it from you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And this is supposed to be, Doug, this is supposed to be one of the most, at least they'd like you to think it is, one of the most business-friendly states in the entire country. But when I see stuff like this, how can you say that's true? I don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't read the letter, but I've heard the National Blue Cross Blue Shield Association has issued a letter just a few days ago on Thursday saying that these proposals are threaten the very existence of Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. That will definitely hurt the 3.8 million people covered by Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. And this is a rush botched job. I mean, this is the bad news. I mean, Joe Vitale is going to have a terrible hangover if this bill gets signed into law, because he's going to see the devastation that his legislation is going to cause to the people who depend on their health care coverage. And Senator Joe Vitale has done a lot of good work on health care issues. He's proud of that, and I'm proud of that too. But he's going to have an awful hangover if this bill gets signed into law when he sees Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield's premiums go up, co-pays go up, and people get hurt.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, Doug, where can people go to get some more information about Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey?
handsoffhealthcarenj.org. That's handsoffhealthcarenj.org. We're also on Facebook. Check us out. There's loads of information there. There's testimonials from a wide variety of organizations and individuals, and we need to hear from more people.
All right, Doug, thanks for reaching out over the weekend and for making yourself available this morning. Critical information for the people of New Jersey. I want to thank you for making yourself available, and I will be listening in this morning at 10 o'clock. I can promise you that. So thank you so much for your efforts here, okay?
Thank you, Bert. Have a great day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. All right, Doug Johnston, my guest, who is the director of Hands Off Healthcare New Jersey. And we'll see what he's got to say. I'll be listening into this telepress conference a little bit later on this morning. Just something about this just doesn't look good. Doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. Something about this just doesn't line up correctly.